So with this slide still up, I'd like to address a question I've been asked multiple times in the past. Then we'll get on to these accessory structures. One is, why are they called accessory? Well, they help with the reproductive process. The most important portions are right here, the testes. That's where we have to produce the sperm. But the question that I've been asked more often, if I was to go back to this slide, is what happens when you do this? So you're producing sperm. Can an individual not produce semen? Can an individual no longer ejaculate? No, of course he can. And I think these next 3 slides or so will explain why. Once again, we see a whole lot of anatomy here. And I mentioned the urogenital system. Here's the vas deferens. On this, it's once again labeled as the ductus. Here's the urinary bladder. And the ductus deferens comes down and merges with it. And so the urethra, from here to the end of the penis, is carrying urine and sperm. So that's where the urogenital system comes in. So let's look at specifically this thing kind of looks like a walnut, and this little pair of things, and of course we'll address the penis, which is kind of important for internal fertilization. The seminal vesicles, it's these little things that are going to dump material in, contents in, just as the vas deferens is merging with the urethra. And what it's going to do is it's going to contribute 60% of semen. So for those students that I've had ask me before, can you ejaculate, can you produce semen? Of course you can. 60% of it comes from right here, this little pair. Now, as I put up here, what does it have in it? What does it contribute? Sugar, because remember, those sperm are using mitochondria to be able to swim. And mitochondria will generate the ATP energy using sugar. So, nice, this is contributing to the well-being of the sperm. Also, alkaline secretions, or basic. Now, why would you include that? As we'll see, the vagina is pretty acidic to help to keep down infection. So all of a sudden, if you are going to contribute millions, if not hundreds of millions of sperm into a very acidic environment, that's not going to bode well for the sperm. So if the sperm are bathed in an alkaline secretion, a higher pH, it'll help to buffer out the vaginal acidity to somewhere, hopefully around 7. Then we'll go to this thing that I referred to as walnut shape. That is the prostate. There is only 1 R in it. It's not prostrate. And more alkaline secretions, as well as clotting enzymes. And these clotting enzymes will help to essentially thicken up or make the semen more viscous. And if you look at those numbers over there on the left-hand side, we're now looking at 90% of semen coming from just those 2. So without the testes or with a vasectomy, you're still going to be producing the vast majority of volume of semen if a male ejaculates. Then take a look at these 2 little things right down here. They're tiny. They're called bulbourethral glands. Here's what they do. Is they secrete their contents for lubrication. And they will become the first ones that are going to be active. They're the first ones of these that are going to secrete anything. First, I think it's kind of obvious if you are going to be doing internal fertilization, where you have got friction between the vaginal walls and the penis, it can be beneficial to have a lubricant. Well, that's what those bulbourethral are there for. 2, the reason they're the first ones that become active is what they need to do is secrete their contents to try and clean out at least a portion of the urethra before ejaculation comes and the sperm come flying through there. So it's a little bit of an attempt to clean that out as well. So even though it's lubrication as well as cleaning out the urethra. Now, lastly, what's required, really required for internal fertilization, is the penis. So here I've taken a cross section, and with this cross section, once again, there's a whole lot of detail in here, a whole lot of anatomy. There are about 4 things that I think are the most important. And the things, they really kind of stand out. They look different. Here's the urethra. So the urethra is moving through this tube, this cylinder. Because remember, it's going back into the board and coming out. This is what's referred to as spongy tissue. And same thing with these. And it can fill up with blood. It doesn't have to, but it can. This one cylinder of spongy tissue is called the corpus spongiosum. Then you've got these 2 things that are reminiscent of eyes to me. These have really big openings between those little structures of tissue. I mean, almost cavernous in size, which is why they're called the corpus cavernosum. So we've got 2 of these with really big openings in there and 1 with really tiny openings in there. We've also got a penile artery and a penile vein. So we're bringing blood in, we're taking blood out, in through the artery, out through the vein. There's blood going through these cylinders of spongy tissue all the time. But if all of a sudden I need a penis that is going to be erect, that's going to be upright and rigid to allow for insertion into a vagina, humans aren't like a lot of other animals that actually have a bone that they can insert in there and all of a sudden have this become erect. What we have to do as humans is this. We constrict the penile vein. So outflow of blood goes way, way down. We dilate the penile artery. So the amount of blood that comes flowing in goes way up. So suddenly, it's simple hydraulics. The pressure inside these columns of spongy tissue goes up. And what ends up happening is the penis gets larger in size and it now is rigid and erect and not flaccid. When we look at a situation with a flaccid penis, insertion into a vagina to be able to cause a pregnancy isn't going to be that easy. On the right-hand side, you can see the anatomical differences between the 2. What happens once an erection occurs? What happens once that blood flows in and essentially can't flow out? Now, one thing I want to point out with this, I've been asked about this in the past with classes too. The penis on the left-hand side, if you're not familiar, is uncircumcised. So for social reasons, religious reasons, many people will remove the foreskin right here. I'm not sure of all the reasons as to why. And with an erect penis, you can't tell that there's any difference. And I've had some students in the past say, look, I'm pregnant and I know I'm going to have a boy and I don't know whether I should circumcise or not. And I don't know what a uncircumcised penis looks like. Most textbooks will just include circumcised penises. Once the stimulus is no longer there, the blood flows out and the penis goes flaccid again. Now, if all works out as planned and ejaculation takes place, what happens, go back to digestive system, is peristalsis, that sequential contracting of muscle. And all of that fluid, all of that semen then is moved down through the vas deferens, out through the urethra, and essentially, hopefully, if you want a pregnancy, is released in the vagina near the cervix. You'll see that on probably the next video. Once those sperm are released, those spermatozoa, they're good for about 3 days. A couple things to mention with this before I wrap this up and switch over to females. This is one part of a very, I want to say crappy, but ineffective means of birth control. It's a rhythm method. We'll talk about that once we get to ovulation and the release of the egg. The other thing is this 72 hours is in a body. And so if there's ejaculate, if there's semen on a toilet seat, nobody can say, well, I didn't have sex with anybody, I just got pregnant because maybe I sat on a toilet. No, that's not how it works. This mark of 72 hours, or roughly 3 days, is these spermatozoa inside a body cavity. So that's a look at the male reproductive system. Everything from erections to hormones to spermatogenesis, and I told you that was the simple one. Now we get to go into the more complex one, the more involved reproductive system when it comes to human reproduction. So let me kill this video, let me fire it back up on this same slide, and we'll start to delve into the female component, a true reproductive system.